Sephora's biggest sale of the year is on. Get 20% off the best gifts, including makeup from brands like Rare Beauty.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
20% off skincare from brands like Glow Recipe and Summer Fridays.
These are my fave.
20% off hair care like Way and K18.
I'm obsessed.
And 20% off fragrances like Valentino, Donna, Born, and Roma.
So good.
20% off your purchase, now through December 15th. Shop now at Sephora and Sephora at Kohl's.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
This week we're back with Laura, and we're going to do part 2 of the stages of a serial killer.
Well,
Yes.
So what, just for me, because I wasn't here, just recap like what you guys, just a short recap of what you guys talked about since I wasn't here. Do you remember?
Do you want to?
I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know, but like just roughly, I mean, just the first couple steps or.
Yeah. So, okay. So we covered phase 1, is the fantasy period. This is when they're having the fantasies, the dark fantasies that are, we've talked about this with Bittaker and Norris, when they were at CMC with the other, sexual offenders at that little table talking about their sexual deviant fantasies. This is it's a great example of how it actually escalates into more. It starts off as a fantasy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a perfect example. I mean, but this is how many offenders start off with. And typically with sexual offenders, they don't typically move out of the fantasy stage. Serial killers are obviously different. And then we covered phase 2. So this is when they go into the planning stage. This could be when they're, starting to stalk a victim. It could be when they're collecting data on a victim, or just like kind of like not really hunting yet, but they're out trolling. Like they're looking at certain girls. A good example is like Norris used to go, and Bittaker. They would go to LAX and follow the flight attendants back from LAX to wherever they were staying. They would pick a flight attendant. Yeah. And I mean, this is typical. This is when they're starting to plan, starting to troll, and they'll get a high off of this period for number 2. This is when they're kind of, putting action into their fantasy.
Yeah.
Which is really scary.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how scary that is as a woman, to know that there's people out there that are watching you when you're not paying attention, stalking you and following you when you don't even know.
Right. And a lot of guys go to malls, or at least I guess malls aren't as prevalent as they used to be, but a lot of them have
shopping areas and stuff.
Yes, exactly. They'll go there. Right.
They trolling some girl at a supermarket.
And I remember when I was training to be a PI, my homework was, and I found out on Dexter, Michael C. Hall was given the same assignment, as creepy as it is. My homework for a week was to go follow somebody out of the supermarket and follow them home to practice surveillance.
Oh,
yeah.
Really? How did that go?
And
how did that go?
I mean, it was fine. I mean, nobody suspects me, a young blonde female. They don't expect a PI.
Yeah.
But Michael C. Hall, I've seen interviews talk about it, like preparing for his role as a serial killer. And he was like, it's so creepy because like it was creepy for me too. Like you're following somebody out to their car.
You don't know.
Yeah. And then you have to follow them home. And and for my homework, I had to photograph and videotape it. So it was really creepy. And I mean, this is, I know, but this is what you do as a PI. You have to do surveillance. And what was weird for me too is during this time in training as a PI, I was on the phone with a lot of the serial killers, and they started getting a high off of my training.
Yeah. So you told them what you were doing?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I'm just, trained to be a PI. They were so proud of me, and they were like, you should do this. And Bittaker's like, put the mirrors in the back of the glasses.
Oh
And
my God. I remember this. Yeah.
like Ford was like, you got to get the dog and like have the dog off the leash. You'll get under the car, put the tracking device under the car. Like they kept giving me tips, and it was like almost like they were, it was like a voyeurism for them to experience again with me doing the PI work.
Yeah. That's strange
Yeah,
that
it's crazy.
you were getting, they were helping, they were like giving, they were using their
Advice.
brains, their devious brains.
Because I guess, but it's true. I guess in a way, like the trolling and the hunting is the same as like what you're doing as PI work, but in obviously
why would it
a
be
very
any different? It's
way.
just different, ending.
Right. I mean, because in my job, like whoever I'm told to surveil or whatever, I mean, they can't know who I am, and I just have to be unseen, which is the same thing these guys do in a sense.
That's bizarre.
They can't be known, they can't be seen. Yeah.
So you got up until that point, and then
So we did 3 was hunting and stalking. So okay, I think we started on 3. This is identifying and tracking down potential victims, gathering information on victims, routines, habits, and vulnerabilities, and establishing proximity to the victims. Now, I want to state that not all serial killers go this route, because a lot of them do pick up strangers and surrogates too. So a lot of the trolling can actually look like them going down to like Skid Row or
random selection.
Right. Truck drivers like Wayne and Ford will go to truck stops. There's not always.
Speaking of Wayne, are we going to be able to get him back on again?
Yeah, he'll come back on.
I hope we didn't pry.
No, I can roll back on. Yeah. So yeah, not every serial killer is going to go through this phase where they're like pick a victim and they hunt them, kind of like Gargiulo and stuff. Like I said, that the truckers, they'll go to truck stops, or some of them will go to Skid Row. They'll go to where sex workers hang out, and they'll just look for victims of opportunity. And most of the victims of a serial killer are victims of opportunity. Bittaker and Norris is another example of that. Victims of opportunity.
Yeah.
All the girls were just
they stacked the deck for themselves.
Right.
Like they created their opportunities.
Yeah.
Because they were.
Today I think it would, back then, like Lake and Ing, they would look in want ads for somebody selling cars or video equipment. Today that might look like somebody going on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist.
eBay
that's a scary one. I've sold a couple like pieces of furniture on Facebook Marketplace, and the stuff goes very quickly, but it's like Erie, you have no clue who's coming to get your shit.
No, you don't. One thing I always recommend is tell them you're going to meet at a police station. I've done that when I bought stuff off of Marketplace before. Safer that way.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of serial killers. It's the smartest because I can't tell you how many have done want ads and Craigslist and something of that nature just to lure a victim in. They'll list stuff for free, like something like high value for free, just to lure a victim in. So if it's too good to be true, it usually is. Type of thing. You can't. It's better to be safe than sorry. So meet at a police station is what I always tell people.
We've stupidly had people come to our house.
Well, it's usually for pieces of furniture. It's like, where are you going to bring them? I wouldn't even have thought to meet at a police station just to get rid of a couch.
Yeah.
But it's
makes more sense. Like then they come to your house. Now they've seen your house.
That's true. Or at least have somebody there with you, or at least tell a friend, like, hey, this is this person's profile picture. They're coming to pick something up, just make somebody aware too. I've heard so many cases where a person has said, well, I told a friend or I told my sibling or something that I was meeting you, and it would stop them dead in their tracks because now
There's
it's,
somebody
you know,
third
there's a
party.
witness out there. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I find it interesting how, you know, the serial killers that you do talk to are kind of tweaking all the information that you have and kind of adding
Right.
to it, you know, giving
Mhm.
their spin on it.
Right.
It's always
In a
so
creepy
weird when they
way.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like when
creepy
we
'cause
had
it's
that
like,
guy on, you know, we call him serial killer X. We won't say his name,
mhm,
but like, you know, he was really giving you blueprints of
blueprint.
how he operated,
So
like
creepy.
unadulterated blueprints.
Mhm. Yep. And you know what's funny about him too? So we've only known each other for about a year because two other serial killers brought him to my attention.
Hmm.
And they're like, you need to seriously dig into this guy. And he's been doing something for the past, I would say, probably over a month, probably 2 months at this point. And I saw it from the jump start. And I actually brought up to him, I go, you don't think I know what you're doing?
Hmm.
And he said, I would be in the car and he would call and he would say, honk the horn. And I said, so I just kind of like let it slide a couple times. And then he kept doing it and doing it, honk the horn. And I said, I know you're grooming. And he goes, and he laughed and he goes, how do you know I'm grooming? And I was like, I know what grooming is. And I go, let me guess. The next thing you're going to tell me to do, I'm going to honk the horn. You're going to get me to do it a couple times. And then the next thing you're going to have me do is like swerve the car and then run over like maybe a dead animal. Then you're going to tell me to run over a live animal. Am I right? And he goes, yeah.
Wow.
That's weird. Where does he?
Mhm.
Is that? How did you figure that out? I mean, and that's like such
I
a
just,
bizarro stream of consciousness thinking.
10 years of like literally living with serial killers on San Quentin's death row, I can spot it a mile away. Even some, like I can see like they start so innocently like that. Like just beep the horn. I'm like, no, I know exactly what you're doing. I know exactly where you're going. You think you're the first serial killer that's going to try to groom me? I've been through this rodeo a million times. So I've been able to spot it.
So what's the
So
progression?
So
The progression is that
it's
they get
very
you to beep the
small. It's
horn,
very,
and then you do
yeah.
that. That's a response.
Mhm,
Then they get you to do another
mhm.
task, and you respond.
It'll start off very small, and this is how grooming works. Very minute, very small. Just beep the horn. There's no
Wow.
harm. That's not a crime. That's no nothing. And then
I
I
can't even
already knew.
compute
Like,
that. I can't compute that.
no,
this is how these guys think.
I
Yeah.
know, but I don't compute
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
yeah,
So I
I guess it makes sense. I mean, they start off super innocent, so your
very
your
innocent.
guard is down. You're not
Mhm.
really paying attention to how
Because
they're
if like
manipulating
somebody
you.
said to you guys, beep the horn, what would you think? Like you wouldn't think anything of it. Like
Yeah, I'd be like,
it's so
why?
innocent. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I knew
No.
exactly where he was going to go with it. I go,
Wow.
now you're going to tell me to swerve the car a little bit,
I
run
know
over
what
a
you're
dead
telling me.
animal that's going to turn into a live animal. Then you're going to tell me to do like, it's going to escalate from there. And that's how these guys operate. They're going to start really small where it's nothing. And they're going to build and build and build on it. And this is how
Yeah.
grooming works.
The
And
master manipulators.
exactly. And so when you're looking out for grooming like that, is like, people are like, oh, how do people get groomed? I'm like, you have to understand how small it starts. No one sees it coming. This is why it's grooming. It's so manipulative. People don't see it, and people don't see it coming. So here's a perfect example of one just did it to me, and I was like, I see exactly what you're doing right now.
So what did he do when you shut him down?
He laughed. He's like, okay,
He was testing you.
test. It's a test. Yeah, they
Wow.
all will test you. Mm-hmm.
And they all have that same kind of
Oh
delivery.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we're after the stalking, putting the fantasy into reality. What's next?
Okay, so we did hunting, right? Phase 3.
Yeah.
Let's go to phase fantasy. Let's see. Okay, so I think I talked about this last week. So the hunting stage, phase 3, everyone in my study has reported this as euphoria. They've all used the word euphoria or something like ecstasy for them. This is the most exciting stage for them because they're kind of going beyond fantasy. They're going beyond planning. Now they're putting even more action into it. So they might be talking to somebody they're stalking to, or maybe they're going to Skid Row or a place where there's sex workers and they're starting to engage with them. And now they're actually plotting of, okay, well, now I see, you're alone at 10 p.m. at night. This is the perfect time I can grab you. So this is like their euphoric stage. So it's right before phase 4, which is the capture phase. So in phase 3, let's see. Hunting strategies, targeting. Trying to see what my offenders said. Okay, so this is exactly what we're talking about. This is where they're going to use the bait. They're going to use fake online, ads,
Becky.
presents.
Sorry, one more time. Start over again.
This is when they're going to start to actually throw out bait for their hunt. Like fake, profiles online, fake ads online, stuff of that nature. They're throwing out the bait. They're going to be exploring the public places, engaging with the victim, utilizing technology, which is a big thing. And they're going to be actually creating opportunities. This can be offering rides to somebody, like we saw with Bittaker and Norris. And then Kemper was another good example of that. John Wayne Gacy offered them jobs or work. Let's see, Ted Bundy, pretending to have a broken arm to get the girls in the car. This is where the ruses come in. This is where they're kind of testing the water. Okay, so during this phase, they're going to have increased excitement and thrill seeking. And like I said, during my study, the 2 words that were used the most was euphoria and ecstasy. There's a sense of power and control over the victim, emotional detachment from the victim's suffering. Okay, so now they're going to start to depersonalize the victim in phase 2, and they start to rationalize in phase 2, but now in phase 3,
like what would be an example? What would be an example of rationalization?
Well, we talked about this last week. Okay, so they might be saying to themselves, well, she's on drugs or she's a sex worker, and
the women who live on the fringe.
Yeah.
But it could be. It doesn't even have to be that. I'm trying to think of a good example. There was a serial killer in New York who was with a sex worker, and she actually said to him, she goes, "I wish I was dead," and he took that as like, okay, well, I guess that's my rationalization. She wants to be dead. It'll be that kind of thing. But then there's some serial killers who don't even go through that rationalization. Like look at Bittaker and Norris. They didn't go through any of that. They just didn't. There was no care in the world. Yeah. There was no
picked whoever they wanted.
Right.
Yeah. Until Roy got caught, then he cared.
He didn't really care. I mean, not Roy. I mean, he pretended to care. So I want to state that is some of them will go through, telling themselves stories or narrative. But there are ones like Bittaker and Norris who really truly don't care. And they're not going to go through this phase, so keep this subjective as I'm going through. It really depends on the killer. So, and then they'll start, this is where they're going to go back to the fantasy, but now they're going to be escalating it and mentally preparing the actual scene with a picked victim that they have already in mind. So that'll happen during phase 3. Now, these are the behavioral indicators that people might notice during phase 3. There's going to be unexplained changes in their daily routines. Now, you'll probably see that happen with phase 2 as well. and we talked about this last week, is a lot of my offenders said like, oh, it started off as like 2 hours a day, escalated up to 4 hours a day, and it can get up to 15 to 20 hours. I think 20 hours was the most reported in my study.
In one
But they
day?
said it was like a drug. Yeah, one day. They would just drive and troll and hunt, and it was like a drug, literally a drug. They couldn't stop. Like this, like I said, this is the euphoria, the ecstasy of trolling and hunting, and it'll escalate. So
sick.
it's crazy. So if you are a family member of somebody, or if you're a friend or a coworker, you will see changes to the routine. And especially if you're living with somebody who might be going through this, you're going to see a big behavioral shift as well. You might see them very irritable. And once they leave, they're not going to have any explanation where they're going. They might give you some excuses, but you might even think they're having an affair. But they'll come back a changed person because they got that fix. They got that high, Jekyll Hyde type of thing. Boy Scout to, no, it would be Jack the Ripper to Boy Scout coming back in the door. So once they get that fix, they're going to come back, kind of like the person you knew them, but they're going to be very irritable until they go out and get that fix. So
I
you
wonder,
will.
I'd be curious to ask Carrie Ross on that, BTK's
Oh,
daughter,
I'm sure.
because
I'm sure she saw similar
she
stuff.
said he was the best dad to her. He said he was always there. And like, it was so like, she was in shock when she was told.
Yeah. Yeah. She
She
said
had
it
She's
was
no
probably
clue.
like, I have no doubt he probably was. But BTK was a hunter, a
I
troller, so
know.
I'm
That's
sure.
what I'm saying.
but she might not have noticed because it was her dad. Like
I
the
was gonna
wife
say,
would have
with a
noticed.
little kid, I bet the wife would have noticed more. But
Yeah.
you should ask her, because I wonder if she noticed maybe he left during the night, or maybe she heard him sneak out at night. She might have had, but she, as a kid, you probably don't think anything of it. If I heard my dad leaving when I was a little girl, I'd be like, okay, he's going to the gas station or going to get milk. Like I wouldn't,
Yeah.
your
Wouldn't
mind isn't
register.
tuned to, right,
Yeah. And you're a
right,
kid, you don't know.
Yeah,
But
you're not thinking, oh, my dad's going out to hunt and kill people.
and he
no.
was so anal retentive about everything, very OCD.
Mhm.
He probably had everything
Right.
dialed. He always had everything dialed in.
Yeah.
It's super creepy.
No, if we can get Carrie on, we should totally talk to her.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'd love to. I'd love for you to talk to Carrie.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
love to hear if she saw anything, maybe like what I'm talking about, when she was a kid, if she noticed something like this,
Yeah.
going on. Like I said, his wife probably knows more, but she might have seen things like this, or maybe like
Mhm.
him being in a bad mood, and then the next day he's in a great mood.
Yeah.
Something as, as
Even if
small
we
as
can't get
that.
her on, we
Yeah.
have her recordings. We can actually listen. You can listen.
Right.
She's pretty detailed. She spent
Yeah.
like 2
Yeah.
hours.
She's
talking
very
to us.
intense. It's a really good interview.
Yeah.
And it was very traumatic, as you can imagine. So
Oh,
traumatic
yeah.
for her, I
Mhm.
hate to like ask her to relive these things, especially since we've already interviewed her. But yeah, we can
Right.
listen to it and see what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
because that it's really interesting how you say, for people. Because if you, by those classifications, my dad, when he was after work, he would go to the bar and then he wouldn't come home until late at night. So, it could be
Well,
something
that's
like
the thing.
that.
Like people doing normal stuff like that. Like they might go to the
Exactly.
bar, they would be with friends, and you never think,
But
something
I had
like
no
that.
idea where he was.
Yeah.
How do you really know who? You just when you're a kid, your dad's either work or doing
Right.
other stuff.
Right.
It's not like you're checking in with him.
Right. And like
Especially
I
about,
said, it could seem like an affair. It could seem like, anything. People, a lot of the women.
Gary Ridgway's wife told me that he would come back with like, mud on his shoes, like things like this, that she would just be like, what are you doing? Where have you been? And he would never give her a straight answer.
Yeah, that was a crazy interview.
It was terrible. That poor woman.
Yeah.
But he would come back in a better mood, she said too.
Right. They will come back in a better mood. you have to look at pretty much the only way to tell is like these behavioral cues. Pretty much is they're gonna leave. And some of the wives and girlfriends have reported like they were in such a volatile mood or even abusive. Like when they left, it was almost like, oh, phew, and they would come back, a Boy Scout again, because they got that fix. They got that surrogate.
They got the surge out,
Mhm.
all their frustration, pent up, whatever.
So, I mean, a lot of wives and girlfriends, they don't even question it. They're just like, okay, well, he's going to come back in a better mood and I don't have to deal with it, too.
That's weird.
That's
How long was she married to Gary again?
A while. I don't remember exactly.
Well, he stopped for how many years? Like 5 years because of her?
I can't remember. I just remember he went for a long period of time. Like,
Yeah.
He stabbed some kid when he was 16.
Yeah.
So, it was like the first part of it. And I don't know if did that kid die? I can't remember if he died or not, or if he survived. I think he survived because he talked about it. But yeah, I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, you look at him at 16, then you look at Edmund Kemper, who killed his grandparents, teenage years. You look at Bittaker, who was breaking into homes, peeping Toms, teenage years.
He could have killed somebody when he was a teenager. He could have not told you about it. Do you think he would have told you about it?
Well, he told me about the old man he almost killed when he lit the blinds on fire.
We talked about
the house.
that.
Yeah.
Almost killed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
almost. And
he could have killed him. We wouldn't have known.
I do want to state something because the toolbox killer, it's like nails on a chalkboard. So Mary O'Toole talks about, she was like, oh, well, it almost sympathized with Bittaker that his adopted mother, took some matches and put it on his skin as torture.
Mm-hmm.
She did that one time, only one time, and it was not abuse. And I think we've talked about this. It was not torture. The reason she had done that was because he almost killed that man in that fire, and she was trying to teach him about fire. But it was presented on the toolbox killer that he was like abused as a kid. No, this was his adopted mother trying to teach him about fire because he almost killed somebody at 12 years old.
Yeah, that's not a justification to become a serial killer.
No, and I really want to state that because the toolbox killer really misrepresented that. I mean, he almost killed an elderly man asleep, and his mother was just like, I don't know what else to do. I mean, she was dealing with a child psychopath. So,
So what do you do? And it's not even her kid.
What do you do?
It's not even her blood child.
No. If I had a wish list of everybody I could interview, it would be his adoptive parents. Mm-hmm. And there's a famous picture of Bittaker as a little boy with two little girls on the sides of him. He actually gave me the picture, and they were going to adopt these two little girls because they wanted him to have siblings. And at the last minute, his adoptive parents did not adopt these two little girls. And I really wondered if it was because they were scared because of Larry.
Probably.
As a little boy.
Mm-hmm. Probably. They, you have a sense. You have a sense.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we on? Stage 5 now?
Stage 5. Okay. So now we're past the hunting, the stalking, the fantasy. So now we're into the capture phase. This is when they're actually going to take a hold of the victim. So they're going to do so by force, violence, manipulation. Ted Bundy with a cast. Edmund Kemper used the fake watch. Gary Ridgway used the photographs of his son in the car. There's a lot of different ways they're going to do this. But they're going to do, or they can even do an ambush, which is what Bittaker and Norris did when they took Cindy, ripping her right off the sidewalk. Oh my God. Yeah, so there's different methods they're going to use, but this is the capture phase. Now, some of the characteristics you're going to see, or psychological characteristics, is an intense excitement for the thrill seeking. They're going to get a really heightened sense of excitement. a sense of power and control, dominance, of course. Now, this is where they're going to completely emotionally detach from the victim. So they're going to actually objectify the victim during this stage. This is not a person to me anymore. It's a plaything. This is a doll. This is a plaything, a pet. It's not a real human in their minds. This is what they're psychologically going through. And let's see what else is going to happen. Escalating. Okay. So now it's just like everything they've mentally rehearsed is going to play out. But like we talked about in last episode, nothing is ever going to match their fantasy.
Right.
Because, the fantasies are that, they want this. If the girl smiles at them, it's like, oh, they really want this.
Yeah.
So the fantasy is never going to actually match, their crimes.
Yeah.
Ever.
And they're replaying the fantasy over and over in their head.
Right.
So it's like perfect. So, and whatever they do is not perfect.
Exactly. Imagine, and I put it in terms last week. Imagine, you write a screenplay, you're making a movie, right? Now you have the actors on stage, right? You're filming them, and it's nothing like you envisioned or wrote. And you're so pissed off and upset because you're like, this is not what I wanted. They're kind of going in that same, thought process. Like, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I envisioned. And that's what's going to happen every single time for them, because it's not ever going to be what they fantasized about, what they thought, what they rationalized in their brains. It's never going to match that ever.
Yeah, but they're still getting the dopamine rush, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin. I mean, like I said last week, with the trolling, kind of like when we work out. When we work out, we release dopamine and we feel good. We feel energized. We're working out. Our bodies feel good. For them, when they're out trolling, they're going to get that same dopamine rush that we have when we work out. And then what happens is a correlation forms, right? If I do this, I feel good, right? And now if you do something, especially for 30 days, now it's psychologically a habit too. So the way we're working out and we feel good, they're doing the same thing. That correlation is forming. If I do this, I feel good. Now it's my habit.
Yeah.
And now for them, it's, well, I guess working out could be an addiction too. But for them, now this is why you see it go from 2 hours to 4 hours and 6 hours. They literally get addicted to the trolling of this. Yeah.
So how does this apply to someone like, just talking about something that just happened like last week, the guy who shot the United Healthcare CEO, this Luigi guy that they just caught. I mean, have you been following that at all? And
a little bit. I've been picking up. I've been so busy, but I've been hearing bits and pieces. From what I've heard today, he's a vigilante. I don't know if this is accurate or not. I don't know really.
I think he's kind of fashioning himself a vigilante. I mean, he doesn't. I don't know if he fits I don't know what kind of mold he fits, but he's highly intelligent. But I don't know if those are did he go through those same phases, even though he's only done it once?
I don't know, because I have to know more about the case.
Yeah. He obviously trolled the guy. He knew exactly where he was going to be the whole time. And he was there for 10 days beforehand. So
I didn't know that. So he did kind of talk him out and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He knew exactly where he was going to be in that morning and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, he planned with, I can't remember what kind of gun he used, but some people said it was like some sort of ghost gun.
Yeah, it was made with a 3D printer.
Yeah, with a 3D printer. With a 3D printer. It's a ghost gun. So he actually made it from a computer program and a 3D printer.
What?
So there's no like serial numbers. There's no, I don't know if it leaves rifling marks. So it's
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I don't know if that's the gun he used, but they found one on him. But I was just curious if he'd be going through, even though he had never done.
He would go through something similar. I mean, I don't know the motive.
It was a lot of planning. So I guess.
Well, they said that he was in a lot of pain
They said, yeah.
Maybe there was a reason because he wasn't getting the care that he needed from insurance. I don't know, something like this, but
Is he sick, or does he have?
Yeah, like he had some sort of back issue, some weird back issue. I can't even pronounce it, but he was born with it, and I guess it was flaring up, and he had surgery, and that wasn't helping, and who knows? This is like all preliminary. I don't even know if it's actually part of his story, But yeah, I was just curious if someone like that who's only done it once, or who knows if he would have done it
It'll
again.
still fall. He probably did fantasize it beforehand, and then obviously went into the planning, stalking. I mean, he would still follow the same criteria, but in a different way. I have to know more about the case to know for sure. But
It's still very fluid.
He's still going to go through thinking about it, planning about it, stalking. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is same thing. But yeah, I'd have to know more. But it does seem like, he's following the same things. Because I'm sure he had the fantasy way before he even took any action.
Almost like a school shooter.
Right.
One and done,
Mm-hmm.
Even though he tried to get away.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of the school shooters who never make it out of the building.
Right. Right.
So after they capture their victim, then they act out their fantasy, but it doesn't satisfy them. Is that what you're saying?
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the softest loungewear set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at lululemon.com.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never satisfy them.
No.
So, I mean, it's crazy to even think, but this is what I said last week. They're so, they're filled with delusion. I mean, It's a fantasy of delusion. Like, we'll play some more of Bittaker's tapes maybe next week, but you hear him saying like, oh, if I take this girl and I tell her there's robots and, it's Armageddon or whatever, she'll fall in love with me.
Yeah.
Like,
so crazy.
Come on. I mean, but this is how they think. And but yeah, it'll go from capture. Now the next phase they're going to go into phase 5, which is the murder phase. Now the number one motivation for the murder is always sexual gratification. And during my study, I found that 80% of my serial offenders reported sexual gratification being the number one cause. Quickly followed with that is control and dominance, right behind there.
So it's basically just verifying what everybody is pretty much.
Yeah, and what we were talking about, what we've said this before, but that these people just do not have normal sexual relationships with people, and the rejection that they endure as a kid or as a teenager just festers, and grows
Right.
into this thing where they're obsessed with it and they have to control it. They have to control someone in order to feel that power because they're powerless.
Exactly. Right. And I think I want to do an episode on the 4 different types of serial killers that there are too. So we can like kind of learn the differences of each one. Because in my study, I have it lined out with the 4 different types, along with them, categorized with the 7 stages. But then I also categorize it with the paraphilias. So we can kind of like go step by step with it too, because it's important to distinguish, because there are differences of like, a thrill killer or a missionary killer and how they go through the 7 stages and what might be different between them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's very important to go through, distinguishing every single one and what each one is going to encounter, during these stages. So during the murder stage, this will actually be the intense emotional release. This is what 89% of my serial offenders have reported. A sense of power and accomplishment. That was also at 82% in my study. Emotional attachment from their victim's suffering. Let's see. And then it goes into, okay, so these might be some indicators that people around them might notice. Some unexplained injuries or bloodstains, obviously. So if somebody just showed up with black eye, scratches, look out for changes in mood, behavior.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like that was the thing too that I remember. Like, Gary Ridgway would always have these marks and scratches all over him, and he would always tell his wife it was from a dog or from something.
I was
like,
going to say, probably blame it on the pet or something.
Yeah, something totally ridiculous where it's like those are clearly fingernail marks. Like,
yeah. Let's see, changes in behavior or mood, possessions of weapons. Okay, so they might actually go into a period, not all, but some might go into a period of isolation during this phase. Over 70% reported a period of isolation to me during my study.
what does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
They might just
isolation from friends, from people.
Right. They might just not, if they usually call you or they pick up the phone, that might stop, or they might, if they go to work and they go out, for a drink after work, maybe they stop doing that. Maybe if they have a wife and kids, if they're going to like soccer games every day and then that stops, there's going to be a subtle change. There's just going to be a subtle change, and it's going to maybe look like depression or and they might just say, oh, I'm busy or something. It's going to be very, very subtle, but there will be a slight change. Let's see.
I mean, because these guys have to be really good actors to really kind of have a life and be able to do this and keep a lid on it. I mean, that's really,
you're living beyond a double life.
Yeah.
It really is. So
yeah, I mean, how you are, because you're living like as if you're 2 different people.
You have to block it out big time. You have to cement wall.
Right.
I mean, that's like, BTK. That was the thing that was freaky about BTK. I mean, he was like a scout leader, and he was he was a leader
church
in
member.
Church. He was a leader in his church. He was like that's what actually how he got caught. But yeah, and then he was responsible. I mean, he paid his taxes. He had a job. He supported his family. I mean, it's like weird. And then
we got to remember, especially with psychopaths, they're always going to want to overcompensate. And what I mean by that is they're not feeling the way we do, and they're aware of that. They're very aware of that fact. So this is why you'll see they're like he was the nicest guy. Always, he was the friendliest neighbor, always taking out the trash.
Mhm.
They'll do stuff to overcompensate because they're not aware of like what's normal, what's not normal. So
Yeah.
that's why you're going to get a lot of reports of like, oh, he drove me home from work. He was always there to buy me something, pick me up, or took my trash out. They're doing little things to like kind of overcompensate for their lack of emotion. It's very subtle. I mean, it's very hard to recognize. But you're
Sounds like
is
they're
he
grooming the neighborhood. Sounds like they're grooming the neighborhood.
Right, right. I mean, but how many neighbors do you like hear about come forward? They're like,
Oh yeah, I
he
know.
took my trash out.
Look,
He
he's nice.
He babysat.
shoveled my driveway. Right.
Wasn't
That's
it
very
Bittaker who
typical.
babysat?
Bittaker gave to Salvation Army. Who babysat? There is somebody who
One of them
babysat.
who was watching the
There's a
kid.
lot. Was
Who
it
was
Norris? There's a couple. Well, look at Gacy, who was the clown
Yeah.
for kids' parties.
Yes.
There's so many examples.
I hate that picture.
That clown one
that painting.
is that is the scariest thing, that John Wayne Gacy clown. Oh.
I know. It's freaky.
Really scary.
It's really freaky. Was it Dahmer? Was Dahmer the babysitter?
I don't know.
I don't think so. One of the ones that you've done, that you've talked to.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. We have to think about it. Okay, so
it's Suff. William Suff.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Suff. Oh my God, I was talking about him earlier too. Yeah.
The man who killed his child is babysitting.
Yeah.
That's the scariest thing in the world.
And you know what's weird is like I've talked to, out of all the serial killers I've interviewed, they've said to me like I would never touch my child. Like they do have like, standards, I guess you could say. And they've said like I would never touch my child. And a lot of them have said to me, I would never ever touch the woman who birthed my child. So the mother of their child is sacred. Their child is sacred. So for Suff to actually kill his child,
yeah,
even the other serial killers look at him like there's something wrong with him. Like even they say, how could you want to, kill your own child or the mother of your child?
So even other serial killers there have limits.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they even have limits.
Right.
Yeah. They all say to me, they're like, I was bad, but Bittaker, because they've read the book. It's always like Bittaker. And but they kind of like rank themselves. I mean, I guess it's not too weird. I mean, prison.
Well, it's like you said, they felt about Gargiulo too. They're like, yeah, I'm fucked up, but Gargiulo.
They hate Gargiulo. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting. This hierarchy amongst them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, even Douglas Clark and Bittaker, they all thought that they were smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, their little group with Rodney Alcala and them. So weird.
It weird.
Yeah, I remember one time I had just finished the book on Bittaker and Norris, and I was sending it to Wayne, and he goes, "Oh, did they kill like sex workers?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, what were their victims?" And I go, "Well, victim number 1, they ripped off of a sidewalk walking home from church." And I'll never forget even Ford's face. He was like, "What? Because he was like, "Oh, that's horrible." So I mean, yeah.
I mean, come on, it's just insane.
It's insane.
Right.
This little girl is walking home from church, ripping
like Redondo Beach.
No, I know, but still,
which is like
I'm
the
kind of reacting.
safest neighborhood you could imagine in broad daylight.
Walking home from church. That's why I always say, like, do not walk where there's bushes. Do not walk where there's no one else around. Do not walk if you see a van. Like, run. If you see a van and you're by yourself, run.
The white van.
If you see a white van and you're alone, run. That's all
My
I'm going to
niece-
tell you.
Yeah, my niece is
White
13.
vans.
He's not allowed to park next to white van. I don't
Oh,
want anything to do with it.
no vans. I'm telling you.
No.
My niece is
No,
13.
but what I was reacting to,
I like walked her out to the street and I was like, you see those vans? You never ever walk. And I just, even Romeo, who's 6, I'm like, you do not walk alongside the vans.
Drill that into his head.
I drill it into them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but what I was reacting to is Wayne Adam Ford's reaction to Bittaker. It's just like, my God.
I know.
How could he do that?
How could he do such a thing? But yet, here's Wayne doing what he's done.
Yeah.
I mean, but I do think with Bittaker and Norris, that is so scary to see a teenager walking on the street just get swiped like that in such a horrifying
way
thing to happen to her. It's just
right.
How does that happen? How does that happen? Like what the hell were they doing? Like all day long they're trolling around looking for pretty girls.
It's happening right now.
It is.
It's horrifying.
And if you want to know, I always tell people this because there's I think the FBI puts out that there are 50 serial killers in America right now.
I thought it was higher than that. I thought it was like 250.
Way higher than that.
I thought it was like 250.
No, it's in that it's about 5,000 right now in America.
5,000 right now?
Yeah, because if you go on the Homicide Project, it's 5,000, and that's accurate. If you read the fine print of what the FBI puts out, it's 50 at any given second in time in America is out trolling and hunting. So what we're talking about, trolling and hunting, that's 50 out on the street right now. That's not the totality of them. That's the ones out there right now just cruising around. There's 50 at any given second in time.
How do they get that data? Just based on the bodies that have similar deaths?
Yeah. Go on. I'll give you guys the website. There's a really good, what's the website? It's a homicide project, but they keep track of everything. And I mean, they have the most realistic stats available right now. But yeah, I think it's 3,000 to 5,000 right now. But the 50, what people don't guess are like, oh, there's 50 serial killers in America. I'm like, no, 50 at any given second is out on the street hunting. You got to keep that in mind. People don't get that. And they're not, I always hate this. Everyone's like, oh, they're going extinct. The 70s was like golden age. They're going extinct. These guys are not going extinct. I'm sorry. They have been around from the Middle Ages. Okay. They adapt with the times. Yes. Forensic science and cameras are around now. But what these guys do is they're watching Dexter. They're watching CSI. They're learning. They're taking notes. They're just going out in the mountains now. They know to stay away from cameras. They adapt with the times. They've been here since the beginning of time.
Well, yeah, it's like saying that, rapists have been around forever,
Right.
Like people are always going to rape. They're always going to kill. I mean, that's just,
exactly.
You can't
just be like, oh, they're extinct. They're not extinct. They're they're getting smarter.
They're smarter and it's easier for them to stalk online.
Yeah.
Than actually have to go anywhere.
They're going to I guarantee you, the majority right now are in the mountains or wooded areas because there's less cameras. That's where they're going.
Good to know.
Right.
Go up there anymore.
Remember
when we were in the mountains, we were with you at Ing's.
I was going to say, remember when we went to the mountains?
That was the last time.
Yeah. Ing's cabin. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Crazy. Okay. So what time are we at? Oh, okay. So I'm almost done with so the murder phase. Then we're going to go into, all right. So this phase 7, which is the rebirth or depression phase. So, okay. So Bittaker and Norris is a good example where, not every serial killer is going to follow these 7 stages or guidelines. So take it subjectively because, Bittaker and Norris, once they did the murder, they were back at it trolling literally the next day.
Wow.
But then there's other ones, like Ridgway is a good example, where they're going to take some downtime. And now this will depend on the type of serial killer and, the individual themselves. And also, you got to take into account what's going on in their lives. Ridgway stopped because he got married, he fell in love. That can happen. If they
and he had a kid.
Relationship, have a kid, new job, something is, just engaging them in a different way. It can stop this. It can, or at least, prolong it from happening.
Yeah, same thing with BTK too. He had like a period off period because I guess was too busy with all his church and scouting and raising his family.
Right. No, it can happen. And this is the phase where it really is subjective for each killer. So it just depends how long it's going to take them to go through this. But what they'll feel during this is like, this is where they're going to go into kind of more withdrawal. They're going to kind of go into their justification phase of telling themselves it was okay, or it was just, they might even tell themselves it was just once. It was just once. I'm not going to do it again. And then they'll repeat the cycle. This is very common. About it was just over 50% said they went through this justification where they were like, you know what, I did it once, but I'm not going to do it again. And it cycled and repeated. But then a lot of them, Whitaker Norris, great example, and BTK, they're going to relive the crimes too. So they might have taken a trophy, maybe an audio tape, photograph, a lock of hair. It could be anything. And, that's their trophy, and they're going to use that to relive the crime. And
I have a question. You may not have the answer to it. Is that a gender thing? Do you think that's a male thing, the trophy thing, as opposed to?
I don't. And I don't, because the reason I say this is because I would say I take trophies. But I remember, like, when San Quentin was being dismantled, death row, I said I want to take something from San Quentin, and they
but
said
you don't kill anybody. That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm talking about.
But I feel like even
I know and a predator's
know
a female serial killer. Should they take trophies?
But I feel like every single investigator and homicide detective I know also takes like a case file. There's just some type of like. I feel like we all kind of do it too. Like all the detectives I know do it too. Like, I can't tell you, I was just at a detective's house the other day and he goes, here's my murder book, just like a serial killer with like the police files or whatever. But he had it like in his china cabinet, like displayed, like almost like a china plate.
Well,
so
yeah,
I feel
that's representative of his work.
Well,
what
yeah,
what I was trying to
represent my work.
Yeah, what I was trying to explain is that the fact that they take it after they kill somebody, so obviously they can visualize, have some sort of and relive it. And I didn't know whether or not that was something that was more male dominated versus female. Like, do female serial killers, do they take trophies?
They do.
Okay,
they
so
do.
there you go. That was basically it.
Historically, it's weird. Females are very different. But for trophies in history, a lot have taken blood. That's been something females do, but also a lot of them thought the blood was going to make them youthful and younger too. So
like a vampire. Okay. On that note,
I guess at first we should end it. Yeah. So I guess So women are trying to be youthful. Men are taking things for sexual gratification.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
There you go.
Awesome. This is so interesting. Next week, I think let's go over the 4 different types.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we can talk about Whitaker and Norris.
Yeah.
Using those.
We'll get some more tapes on. We'll have Wayne back on.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
No problem.
See you next week.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.